Do you think that there's female gun makers all over the world or what?
Yeah,
bro?
who do you think was working production in World War II when all of our men were going overseas?
They weren't designing the guns. They were literally on an assembly line putting a fucking screw in a fucking piece of metal. They weren't designing weapons. What world do you live in?
That's great, and at the end of the day, both jobs matter. You could be the best engineer in the world if you don't have somebody building your shit.
Andrew Wilson completely destroyed woke legendary debater Destiny and left him utterly speechless.
It would be an interesting thing. Do the countries with the strongest men have the most rights? Not really, no. In fact, just the opposite. I remember hearing so many jokes about how because Russia is so masculine and manly that all the trans Ukrainian soldiers were going to be getting murdered by the brave Russian soldiers. And here we've got drone operators, tossing grenades on Russian troops blowing themselves, right? So it doesn't seem to be the case that just strong men are a good predictor of rights.
So hang on, wait a second.
Go for it.
So men can take your rights away in those other countries too?
No, not just men. Those countries can take your rights away. You need a whole
institution. Using the enforcement arm of who? Which sex do you think is the enforcement arm?
Countries are powered by men and women. When the Soviet Union beat
is the enforcement
Nazi
arm?
Germany, when the Soviet, it's not just about the enforcement arm. Who's giving them the arms to enforce?
Usually other men.
Who manufactures the guns? Who manufactures?
Do you think that there's female gun makers all over the world or what?
Yeah,
bro?
who do you think was working production in World War II when all of our men were going overseas?
They weren't designing the guns. They were literally on an assembly line putting a fucking screw in a fucking piece of metal. They weren't designing weapons. What world do you live in?
That's great, and at the end of the day, both jobs matter. You could be the best engineer in the world if you don't have somebody building your shit.
Bro, Destiny just lost it here. Andrew immediately pointed out the flaw in Destiny's argument that powerful women's make a country safe and not the powerful men. But bro, Destiny, technically, even if both designing a gun and putting a screw in it matter for the final product to exist, but trying to equate the two is absurd. Even if there is no woman putting the screw in the gun, anyone can do that job. But designing of weapons is more difficult and crucial job. It's not the same as putting the screw in the gun as a factory worker. I'm not trying to say men are better and women are useless, but we are simply looking at historical facts of how things have worked for many countries.
Of men. You say it's not masculine men who are defending these rights. However, it is masculine men who are in the military, in law enforcement, things like this, who are the enforcement arm of these rights, who these government institutions rely heavily on in order to enforce what their will is. So it always does come down to enforcement.
Do you think then that the countries where women have the most rights are the countries with the most masculine, strong men?
So they're not mutually exclusive or non-exclusive.
I didn't say they're mutually exclusive. I'm asking because you make it sound like it's just strong men that grant rights. So does that mean that if I were to look at all the women's rights in the world,
there's a problem there. There's a smuggling again where you say strong masculine men are the only ones doing them. I'm just saying men is the default are the ones who are doing this.
Wait, but why you say men are the default? Like, we can run that back a little bit more reductively. Shouldn't it be 6 feet or taller men? Like, don't all men that are 5'8" and lower get their rights from men that are 6 feet and taller?
No.
Why not?
Because they don't have a non-equalization on force. A 5'8" person can defend themselves against a 6-foot person.
In general, do you think that's true?
I think that there are some advantages, but if you're going to do that, then on average,
no, not some advantages. I'm saying on average, if we look at combat sports with no weight classes, do you think 5'8" men are defending?
Well, hang on. So if we're going to use averages, then let's use averages and say that we have an average for a reason because most men are inside of that average, right? So if that's true, then most of the men who would be falling in these jobs are going to be within that average, Destiny. So
sure, but I'm just asking if we run this all the way back. So any man that's below the average height, any man that's 5'9" or lower, their rights are also being defended by men that are 6'2" and taller.
Well, no, that wouldn't be a direct correlate for equalization.
Destiny is just trying to win the argument by tying Andrew up in knots. His whole argument about tall men protecting short men is a perfect example. Andrew makes a straightforward point that men as a group are the primary protectors in society. Destiny can't argue with that obvious reality, so he tries to distract from it with a ridiculous tangent. Shouldn't it be 6 feet or taller men? Like, don't all men that are 5'8" and lower get their rights from men that are 6 feet and taller? This is what these people do. It's a cheap debate lord trick. They know they can't win on the substance of the argument, so they play these dumb little mental gymnastics to make it seem like the other person's point is too broad or unfalsifiable. He's not arguing in good faith. He's just trying to be a contrarian because he sees Andrew as the enemy.
There's far fewer of them than men who are in the average aggregate. So therefore, the force equalization is different. However, if you're looking at the force differential from men to women, the average is so lopsided that even weak men can generally defend themselves fairly well against strong women.
If you want to do force equalization there, then shouldn't we be looking at people that prefer a heavily patriarchal society versus people that prefer a more egalitarian one? And the force equalization for women on the egalitarian one would be probably that most men would side with that over the ones that want the heavily patriarchal one?
Yeah, but that would go with my point, which is that men are the ones who are the rights givers.
But men aren't just the rights givers there, because a coalition of 5'9" and shorter men with women are probably going to defend rights more than a coalition of 6 foot plus alpha men.
But the distinction there is that you said it yourself. It would be a coalition of men and women, but it'll never be women. So it'll always have to be men.
And it'll never be 5'8" and lower men, I don't think,
no,
right?
it will always be. The default will always go to men. Men can always enforce their rights collectively.
Okay, so you just want to arbitrarily cut it off at just men, but not go into any of the delineations.
I just went into every delineation with you. Which one would you like to go into?
I mean, I already said it. I think that you could argue that taller men are the ones that run society, and shorter men only exist in society essentially at the behest of larger men, basically.
Yeah, but we just covered this. That's true. You could say that, but if you're looking at an average, then you're saying that the men who are outside of the average are fewer in number than the men who are in the average. So they're outnumbered. So I don't know what your point is.
I mean, it could be the slightly taller men could probably take on 1.5 shorter men. I'm sure we could find some average where 30% of men in society can run the other 70%.
And it's still
just
men.
like nobody looks at...
And it's still men.
Sure.
Destiny just proved himself wrong. This is what happens who you are so good at debating that you end up coming at a conclusion that you are on the wrong side. But in the case of Destiny, even if he is a great debater, he still has this ego which is not allowing him to accept the truth. He just wants to win against Andrew. If men didn't exist, society as we know it wouldn't exist. Not just for reproduction, but for everything else. Let's be real. Who built the roads? Who designed the cities? Who invented the engines, the computers, and the weapons? It's an uncomfortable truth for people like Destiny. But the overwhelming majority of the inventions and infrastructure that keep society from collapsing were created by men. Destiny's refusal to acknowledge this simple fact is proof that he's not interested in an honest conversation. He's just playing a game to protect his woke worldview. But anyways, let me know what you guys think about this in comment section below. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel for more sanity, and let's meet in the next one.